Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to go over XRP's role in the BRICS nations. If you don't know what the BRICS nations are, we're about to explain that, but I've got some really cool news to bring you before we get into this video. So as you know, there's been an XRP documentary that was filmed earlier this year, actually maybe late last year, I can't even remember. Anyway, I flew out to LA to go and film this thing, and now it's coming out. It's coming out in November. And I wanted to just give you a few pieces of information so that you can get hold of that documentary the day it launches, and even in many cases a little bit earlier. So let's talk about this. So they're going to be in person doing a showing where they have a one night special event where you can meet the cast and crew. I don't think I'm going to be there. I think most of these are pretty difficult for me to get to at this time. But you can see the documentary first before anyone else in person and participate in a live Q&A. They're going to be in Scottsdale, Arizona on the 12th of November, on the 13th in Houston, on the 14th in Atlanta, on the 15th in Washington, D.C., on the 16th, New York City, 17th in Boston, and 19th back in L.A. So if you want to get access to pre-sale tickets for the digital version of it, to watch the documentary, the digital version, it's $15, that's all it is. And you can go to fruitionproductions.com to buy those tickets. I'm going to be in it. Let me know what you think of it. I've got the pre-sale already. I've already ordered a t-shirt as well. But let's get back into the video here. So, XRP and the BRICS nations. Let's first break down BRICS nations, because you might be watching this video and you might not know what they even are. You've probably heard it on the news. Well, the BRICS nations are, it's really just an abbreviation, an acronym for different countries. So you've got Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. I did it without stumbling. Those are the BRICS nations. Now, you've also got something called BRICS Plus. And BRICS Plus is a whole suite of other countries, like 25 different countries on that list. And these are basically all BRICS country sympathizers. Like they're more on the side of those countries than the Western world, let's say, and that's not necessarily always the case. But anyway, the point is, these countries are just like a conglomerate of countries. They kind of work together. They're kind of aligned on many things, and everything that they do kind of works in their own ecosystem. And so when we're looking at BRICS nations in general, we typically see a common trait among all of them, that is the desire to separate from the US dollar. Why is that a problem? Why have I said it with that much impact? Well, the whole world operates on the US dollar. The whole strength of the US dollar, the whole reason the US has a big standing in the world is because of the dollar. And the dollar is only held up by a few things. One, the dollar is a dollar because America say a dollar is a dollar. That's actually it. In history, before 1970 something, the dollar was based on a certain amount of gold, that the whole world agreed on a gold price, and a dollar was just represented by a portion of gold. But they took away that, and that was called the gold standard. They took away the gold standard, and now they just said, well, a dollar just means a dollar because a dollar means a dollar, okay? And everyone's got to do that. Everyone's got to follow by that rule. And everyone's like, I'm not sure, but okay. And then the rest of the world kind of carried on, and that's how we handle the dollar. The dollar is just a dollar, and we use everything as a base against the dollar, just like we used to go say gold was that kind of root number, that asset that we based everything off. Now it's the dollar. Now the BRICS nations don't necessarily like that, and so what we've seen over time, certainly in recent time, is BRICS nations being slightly open, considerably open, I would say, to the idea of a system that would operate outside of the dollar. You can see how this works, right? And so naturally, if you're talking about what makes the world go round, just like the BRICS nations, it makes the BRICS nations go round, it makes the Western world go round, it's money. Money makes the world go round. So if you can fix a problem in the financial system and also allow the BRICS nations to separate themselves from the US-backed financial system, you create something that's quite appealing for BRICS nations. Now let's look at these BRICS nations a little bit closer. You've got Brazil and South Africa, which kind of, they are their own economies, their own countries, of course, but they kind of follow the pack. They're not making any big decisions. They're not massive economies versus China and Russia, for example. There are tiers to this thing. Like China seems to be basically the leader because they have the biggest economy. But when they deal together, they deal in something called their equality policy. So they always act in a way in accordance to equal representation, which I find quite interesting, because China could quite easily dominate that whole thing. What I will say, though, is that typically you have Russia and India acting as their own entities. They act almost like independents. So you got China that does something. Russia and India kind of do their own thing, but they're within the BRICS nations, and they obviously get on with China. And then South Africa and Brazil kind of just follow what China does in many ways. That's a very blanket statement, but I'm trying to get you into the dynamics here because it's going to make sense for when we talk about XRP in a second. So now that we know that we have a whole BRICS nation group of a group of nations, BRICS nations, who are sympathetic to the idea of moving away from the dollar, you start getting reports and experimentations and pilots and testing and open-mindedness to different technologies that help their world go round, obviously in the money area, in the finance and the payments section of life, of their economy. And so we saw this the other day, which I find quite interesting. We've always been speculating about how would XRP be used? Would XRP be used? And I was doing a little bit of research here a little bit earlier. I want to make sure that this is understood. 40% of the world's population, 40% resides in just these BRICS nations, just in Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. 40% of the population in 5 countries. When they change over a system, if they remove themselves from the dollar, that's a global change. That's that's a big deal in world finance. Now you've just simply got to narrow down what their options are. I like doing this. It's like reverse engineering the thought process. What are their options? The options for these BRICS nations, if they are going to commit to removing themselves from the dollar, is how do we make our payments not USA restricted, so out of the confines of the US, decentralized from the US system. How can we do that? Well, you can only really do that by either developing your own new technology, like blockchain, like developing a whole new thing. Like we've got internet, you've got Web 2, and then you've got blockchain technology. They'd have to create something else, something new that we haven't invented before, or just use blockchain technology, which in and of itself is kind of allowing decentralization and the removal of the need for the US. I think it's likely that they're just going to go with cryptocurrency and blockchain. And so if you're narrowing it down like that, okay, now we're in blockchain, what technology can we use here? Okay, well, we could probably use our own blockchain, our own cryptocurrency, but we would have to undergo a load of testing. Or we can use a pre-existing cryptocurrency that's not that's centralized. It's not owned by the US, not controlled by the US. It's its own thing that anyone can use. It's agnostic. Anyone from anywhere can use it. It seems like that's a more likely path to go down. Certainly if you're motivated to remove yourself from the US financial system. If you're not motivated to move, you'll just take the time to make your own blockchain. So the big question here, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is the motivation there to speed up the process to remove themselves from the US system? And I just think there is. I think there is motivation there. I actually think that motivation perhaps slows down if Trump gets in, because I tend to think that the BRICS nations and Trump will just get along. I think they'll do business well, make good deals that help America, and also I think slows down that desire to remove themselves from the dollar. I think if Harris gets in, I think that's a signal. This is an interesting way. I didn't expect this conversation to go this way. If Harris gets in, I think there is an increased urgency and increased motivation for BRICS nations to remove themselves from the dollar. I think if Trump is in charge, the BRICS nations will look at that as the dollar is actually going to remain strong. And actually it was going to do us some favors to remain on the dollar. Therefore, the motivation to change, to remove themselves, goes down and actually allows the BRICS nations more opportunity to think of their own solution to this. That's an interesting... let me know what you think in the comments, because this is all a thought process I'm having like live on camera, as you can see. Now, I will say, Russia do know about XRP. They do know, they completely understand it. I've even got a thing on my screen here. I know that this was from the Bank of Russia, and they have the whole documentation on payments and stuff. I think I just joined Twitter again, by the way. I'm kind of back on there, but I'm not going to be engaging so much on it. I'll just be posting. But I saw Edo Farina posted this really good find, and this is basically Russia, the Bank of Russia, explaining how XRP works as a good representation for how cross-border payments can work in this new world. And so they didn't use any other examples of any other technology. They only talked about XRP, and they explained it perfectly. I did have the document translated. They are looking at XRP in a very positive way, like very positive. I typically like to look for sentiment on these documents, because if the sentiment is like, if the context of them mentioning it is like, here's an example of distributed ledger technology, and they show it like that, and then they also mention there are other ones like this one, this one, this one, then you can tell the sentiment is like, it's unbiased. They're just explaining the technology. This did explain the technology, but the sentiment was very good. It was very supportive of what they're doing and very positive. So I look at this as a signal that not only we already knew that Russia were looking at XRP. This is just more confirmation of that. But when we play into the dynamics of the BRICS nations, as I was talking about earlier, how this is going to loop back in, the dynamics between them play a really important role. If Russia adopt XRP, at best it will trigger the interest of China. Then Russia aren't in charge in BRICS. China are in charge. But what will happen is you'll get India that will go, what are you doing, Russia? Because we're on the same level. They're more like, what are you doing? What's going to work for you? And looking at that dynamic and knowing that dynamic before we talk about XRP is interesting, because India also have trialed XRP, right? So it's interesting that those two layers, Russia and India, the way their dynamics are, they're both ones that have tested it. And then you've got Brazil and South Africa. I can tell you that Brad Garlinghouse and Ripple have been in meetings with the Central Bank of Brazil. So what we're seeing here is it's almost like you've got the manager, and then you've got all the people working underneath, and all the people working underneath know of this really good way to like improve their jobs and their efficiency, and they're going to look good to their boss, but they haven't quite plucked up the courage yet to do a presentation to the boss to say, hey, look what we found, everyone. Look, I'm being Putin, but in not a Putin voice. Me and India found this like really cool technology. It's going to really be good for payments. We even talked about it with Brazil, and they like it. South Africa like it too. We want to bring it to you, see if you would want to put it in place. And then this is what we need, essentially. We need China, because if China moves with XRP, it kind of all follows, because China are in charge. But this is I wanted this to be a realistic view of where XRP is in the BRICS nations conversation. And I really wanted to touch on dynamics between all the different countries, because I think that actually plays really interestingly into the roadmap of how this works. Ultimately, we need this to get into China's hands. Would really love to know what you're thinking about this. Remember, if you haven't got your pre-sale tickets for the XRP Unleashed documentary that features me. I don't know how many episodes I'm in, but I can't wait to see it. Remember those dates to be there in person, but you can also just go to fruitionproductions.com to buy your pre-sale ticket, which is $15. I will also say, if little insights like today's video and thought processes and stuff are interesting to you, I suggest that you join my newsletter. I post actually 3 times a week. Gulp. It's quite intense, but if you're up for that intensity and learning some stuff about crypto and the way my mind works, and also, you know, listening to how some of the I always put some student success stories on my emails as well, because I'm proud of them. And also I want to show you that these things are possible, that you can actually do some really good things in crypto financially and for you as a person. So if you're interested in all of that, register for the newsletter. The link is in the description. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who might want to know more about XRP. And that's all I've got. Stay emotionless. I'll see you in the next one.